Hello, a very good morning to you and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis show. I am your host, Samson Ladi Ayenini. An unintelligent or more dangerous way of making decisions is to put those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. Thomas Sowell, paraphrased. The doctors broke the law, but was the Fair Wages Commission not the first to break the law? But will the TUC and allied stakeholders succeed where government failed in stopping doctors and teachers and now the keepers of our dockets from striking? Permanent solutions, that's the bottom line. So share your views on the show. Revealing affidavits by Dr. Muhammadu Bawumia and co. But how do they want to get John Mahama down to 33.17% and Nanado up to 59.55%? We await Afarijan's explanation for alleged 705 diaspora ghost voters on the electoral roll. And finally, SADA faces probes from Parliament and SRAJ. To what end, really? Those are the questions that we'll be treating on this show today. You're welcome with your views and comments. This show is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of MTN, everywhere you go, and Star Assurance, your solid partner. We'll be right back.
There are doomsday prophets who have said the three wise men will be in conflict with ministers. I wish to assure them that there's not going to be any such conflict. Indeed, they're going to be assisting the ministers, and the ministers are going to be working collaboratively with them. I wish to declare inaugurated the committee of wise men who will help me achieve the initiatives, the special initiatives that we have identified. And so I expect that the task force will follow laid down procedures and also will be as transparent and open as possible and look at achieving the best cost option in delivering these initiatives that we have set ourselves. And so with these few words, I wish to declare inaugurated the committee of wise men who will help me achieve the initiatives, the special initiatives that we have identified in terms of education, in terms of healthcare, and in terms of expanding transportation in this country. And so I hereby declare the task force inaugurated. It is not new to use task forces to achieve specific targets that a president wants to achieve without putting it through the normal bureaucracy of the civil service institutions. In my desire to push these initiatives as fast as possible and deliver in the period that we intend it to be delivered, I opted for this task force to help me realize that initiative. The task force will be set by a secretariat, which would assist them with the office support that they need. My expectation is that all laid down procedure will be followed.
Normally, if we put them behind us and then we propose policies, it is very difficult for them to embrace the policy itself. So any policy that will not put teachers first is bound to fail. So we are going to help our minister to put teachers first. What the minister herself is doing is that he has put together a consultative council comprising all the teacher unions and high-level officers from the Ministry of Education and Ministry of the Ghana Education Service and major stakeholders, so that they meet and talk every time. There isn't the need to wait for them to strike before their issues are addressed. So I think if I get the nod, I'll be in position to help the minister to actualize her vision of putting them together, look at their grievances every time, address their grievances, and then persuade them to, or help them to do whatever is expected of them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the first question has to do with the age difference between myself and my minister. Mr. Chairman, I believe that in public service, age does not matter. Irrespective of the age difference, once a boss, you are a boss. And I believe that I will be able to relate very well with my colleague, the minister. There wouldn't be any conflict at all. There wouldn't be any friction at all. I've been a deputy minister before, and I'm very much aware of how I should compose myself in relation to my substantive minister. So there wouldn't be any friction at all, I can assure you. And with regard to the land gas, we are very much aware that the land gas pose a lot of problems to not only the landowners, but those who have acquired lands. What we need to do probably is to ensure that there is no multiple ownership of land title. I think the land gas, the operations of land gas stem from multiple ownership of land title. Fortunately for the Ministry of Land and Natural Resources, we have two important projects which are being implemented. We have the Land Administration Project 1 and the Land Administration Project 2. The first project has come to an end, and the second one has just been rolled out. And one of the important objectives of this Land Administration Project is to curtail situations where we have multiple ownership of land title. I think when the first project came to an end, there are indications that multiple ownership of land title has reduced drastically. And I am very certain that by the end of the second phase, there will be a lot of sanity in the administration of land. Mr. Chairman, we are all very much aware of the disastrous consequences of small-scale mining, especially the illegal ones. Fortunately, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources has established a rapid response unit. I have the information that so far about 8 different units have been established. 3 out of the 8 are now operational, and they have been deployed into seriously endangered communities where these mining operations are ongoing. I think that if we motivate the unit, they will be able to enforce compliance of the law. I believe that the law is not properly enforced. That is why they are in the field doing what is not expected to be done. And apart from the rapid response unit, we also have regional task forces. I'm also told that so far we have 5, and all the 5 regional task forces are operational. And if we, as a ministry, motivate them, I think we'll be able to wipe them up, especially those engaged in illegal mining.
The large majority of our officers are patriotic, they are conscientious, and in my experience, the Ghanaians who come, we, as much as possible, try to treat them with the utmost respect. We may not all together be too successful in all the instances. And there are obviously some bad nuts among us. I'm told that it needs only a bad egg to destroy a whole stew. So maybe the image that you get might be exaggerated.
The provision of the laptops is not enough. We need to monitor their use, make sure that they put the laptops to very good use. And so the distribution of laptops under the Better Ghana agenda would continue as stated in the policy documents of the ministry. But what I will propose to my minister is to ensure that there is effective monitoring and evaluation of the use of the laptops.
The National Road Safety Commission is mainly an advocacy organization. What they would require is additional powers of enforcement. I think that the police is doing its best under the circumstances, but I'm sure that if we're able to get a closer collaboration between the Motor Traffic Unit and the Ghana Police Service, we would be able to enforce the road regulations, enforce the penalties, as well as minimize the speed of accidents on our roads.
You're welcome back. Thanks for keeping your dials on Joy 99.7 FM, Love FM in Kumasi, and over a dozen affiliate stations across the country. You are watching and listening to us also on myjoyonline.com and Multi-TV World/streams. We're coming to you live from the Multi-TV studios. This is your Joy News channel. Newsfile, we put Ghana first, and this show is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of MTN Everywhere You Go and Star Assurance, your solid partner. My guests are seated. Good morning to you, Abdul Malik Kubako Jr., James Sagalga. He is a lawyer, he's an MP, and he's Interior Minister Deputy Designate. Welcome to the show. Good. Kwabna Ejapong. He is former press secretary to President John Ejekum Kufuor. Good morning and welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure.
All right, we are waiting for Chum Barema, who is with the NDC. He's a lawyer. Supposed to be the very final guest that we're having on the show. Well, gentlemen, I have introduced the issues that we are going to look at in my usual style. But first of all, I would like us to take a look at the issue of the doctors. And more importantly, even though it is important to look at the matters that have happened and how they have been managed so far, I think most importantly for our viewers and listeners and 25 million Ghanaians, they want to see solutions. Should government borrow to pay the physicians? Should government borrow to pay the teachers? Should it also borrow to get the judicial staff who are also joining the strike? We are aware that the doctors are likely to activate, the second phase of their strike, and that will be disastrous, that emergencies will not even be taken care of. But it appears also that the TUC and other stakeholders who are getting in are helping to get, calm nerves in the process. I'll start with you, James. You've been to Parliament. We'll look at your side of it also later. But being in government, being in Parliament, and going about your job as a practitioner of the law, and looking at the developments as far as strikes are concerned, what will be your take on how the issues have been handled?
Thank you. And good morning to your cherished listeners. I think that strictly speaking from a legal point of view, I would say that what is happening, on the labor front is regrettable. In this country, we have our laws. Laws are passed by Parliament. The President would normally give his assent. These laws are gazetted, and they are meant to bind all of us as a people. But strangely enough, it appears that we are simply not enforcing the laws the way they should be enforced. Because in cases where there is a breach of some of these laws, it appears the state actors, those who are supposed to ensure that these laws are enforced, are usually found wanting. Now, in the case of the strike action embarked upon by the doctors, I think that the situation is not any different from what we saw when the teachers also embarked upon, a similar action not too long ago. But in the case of the doctors, what is worrying is that the service they render is an essential one. And so Parliament, in its wisdom in passing the labor laws of this country, clearly stipulated under that act that all those who render essential services should not be allowed to embark upon strike actions. Now, why is it so? It is so because when essential service providers embark upon strike actions, usually the consequences, the effect on society, I mean, you will not be able to measure. So in the face of the clear breaches, I think that something ought to be done. The Labour Commission ought to be up and doing. The Fair Wages and Salaries Commission should also be well-resourced to respond more responsibly to some of the issues as and when they arise. Now, Sami, what we must remember is that, look, there is even a very serious human rights dimension to what is going on. Now, doctors have decided to withdraw their services. And yet, constitutionally, we all know that the right to life is guaranteed. So, what is the state of affairs? Clearly, you would see that there is even a threat to our national security because the right to life of citizens, which is guaranteed under the Constitution, is not being respected here because some group of people have decided to flout our labor laws. And so, in very clear terms, I would say that the action embarked upon by the doctors is illegal. They may have genuine concerns that needs to be, addressed. But in attempting to, bring to the attention of the good people of this country and those who are supposed to ensure that the right things are done so that their concerns are addressed, I think that they've also gone too far by doing exactly what the law says they shouldn't do. Now people are suffering, people are dying.
If you go to the police, what does the law say they shouldn't do?
The law prohibits them from embarking upon strike actions because they are essential service providers. That is clear. And so in the clear face of the provisions of the Labour Act, if they decide to go on strike, now you see that the consequences are that people lose their lives as a direct result of the withdrawal of their service. You see, that is why I think that the Parliament, in enacting this act, decided to identify certain key sectors of our economy or certain important services and describe those ones as essential. Now, in so doing, you find that the Parliament, in my estimation, was probably mindful of the fact that if essential service providers were allowed to have the right to embark upon strike actions like all others can do under the Act, the effect, the consequences would be too harsh on the good people of this country. That is why we must continue to negotiate. There are provisions in the Labour Act that the medical doctors could have exploited, but they haven't done that. They are on strike. People are dying. You go to police hospital, the 37 military hospital, the place is choked because everybody is running there, assuming the military and the police, who are also prohibited under the law from embarking upon strike actions, were to say, look, our service conditions are not satisfactory. We are also going to go on strike. I mean, what happens to the good people of this country? So for me, there's a human rights dimension to the whole issue that we have not adverted our minds to. The right to life. The doctors have taken an oath to work regardless of the circumstances. And so I would expect them to be bound by that oath, and also that they must ensure that the breaches that have been occasioned as a result of their withdrawal, is dealt with in such a way that all of us as a people can begin to, have at least some modicum of respect for the laws that we enacted for ourselves.
First question, the doctors activated the legal regime, the processes that are laid down by law to address their grievances. Are you aware of that? Now, having activated that regime, they got to the National Labour Commission, which the law, gives power to pronounce. And the Labour Commission did give a ruling. And the ruling was to the effect that the doctors, were right. That ruling has not been implemented. Where are the doctors wrong in going on strike when, like you say, they are clearly prohibited by law, but those who are supposed to be implementers of the law have also not done their part of the bargain?
Sami, I think in my earlier submission, I made it very clear that it appears those who are supposed to be enforcing our laws are not up to the task, or they are not being proactive in that regard. Now, you see, if you look at the Labour Act carefully, you realize that the Labour Commission itself cannot enforce its decisions. Now, they make the decisions and leave them for the courts to enforce. So one would have expected that once a ruling was delivered in favor of the doctors by the Labour Commission, and realizing that there was non-compliance, the Labour Commission ought to have gone to court to seek to have their ruling enforced. Now, having failed to do so, I don't think that it is open to the doctors to say because the Labour Commission failed to discharge its statutory mandate, they would also flout the law by embarking upon strike actions when the law doesn't allow them to do so. In the worst case scenario, the doctors could have instituted legal action against the Labour Commission to get it to be more proactive in enforcing its own decisions. Remember that the Labour Commission is an independent statutory body. It can sue, it can be sued. So having gone there and having gotten them to deliver a ruling, what stopped them from taking the further step of ensuring that the Labour Commission went to court to enforce their ruling? So, all in all, what the doctors have done is indefensible. I mean, in the face of the law, it's indefensible. I sympathize with them. They may have genuine concerns which needs to be addressed, but I don't think that a strike action in the clear face of the law is the way to go.
I see. Let me bring in Abdul Malik here. We'll talk about the solutions because, as I said, that's the most important way forward now. Abdul Malik, what's your take on the developments and, more importantly, the posture adopted by the doctors, of course, including other striking, civil servants and the government?
Well, maybe I'm overestimating and something that happened, but if I'm right, did I hear that after the Thursday meeting, all sides agreed that one, they should terminate the media war?
That is so.
They called for a certain truce.
Media truce.
To come to the center, that's the negotiating table, in the right spirit, and to proceed forward. I am hoping that would have some effect, because where we've reached is solutions that we want. To really try and analyze and try to allocate blame and the rest would not resolve the matter. Because indeed, the truth is that there's been violations of the law across board by all the players in the face of the law as written, black and white. So really, why would it be? It wouldn't be fair to single out one group, talk strictly in terms of the law, and what next? What do? We need to resolve the problems. I think there is a certain lack of trust that is informing all these things. We have the law, we have the institutions. It's human beings that are manning all these things. And if there's no trust, which appears to be lack of trust, entrenched. And why is it so? I've been asking too many questions, which is worrying me. You talk of arrears, and then when you check, you are looking at arrears that have accumulated over more than a year. And there supposed to have been all sorts of negotiations around that accumulation. What is it that is disabling us in terms of the system and the law to deal with these issues, so that we get into a situation where essential service providers withdraw their services, and then we come and make, and I'm not talking about you, brother, I'm talking in general terms, do all sorts of analysis. So to be honest with you, if indeed they all agreed to cease, and the media reflection, I was surprised when I think I sensed a certain attitude on the part of government, whose employer, bottom line, that we're ready to fight, quoting the law and doing all those things. It's not new, but I was surprised. The government thought that was an approach. The body language, okay, wasn't the right thing. Then you've had some groups from nowhere, mushrooming and also making interventions. Those send me back to the Champon days, when all sorts of groups are floated and they come, they talk, and they don't represent the mainstream of these professional groups that are on industrial action. That also doesn't help anybody. It's an unhelpful and diversionary input that we do not need. I think that once they've agreed to negotiate with the right spirit, stop the media agitation, and sit down, I would hope, and I'm being honest with you, I would hope that from next week we find solutions to this matter.
According to their roadmap, by Monday they should be activating the second phase, which is that no attendance to emergency services.
Yes, I would plead that, you see, it shows that the doctors were not callous when they decided to proceed in that direction. There's a certain sensitivity and humanism in them. So they decided to, work to rule. There are all sorts of forms of going on strike, work to rule, go slow, and all those things before, just to let the larger society know that, look, we are not animals, quote unquote. We are sensitive to your plight. So that itself, for me, showed a certain sense of proportion and moderation. And I thought that would be a catalyst to facilitating the dialogue. So it's fair, and I will plead that they don't. Since the Thursday meeting, I think that should lead to a deferment of that second stage of activating the thing, or heightening the thing. I believe so. I also, to be honest with you, I think we've reached the stage that I would, and I know it's a difficult thing I'm going to say, and I'm nobody, so this is just a small guy's opinion. I think that the doctors ought to also compromise. Okay? It is obvious that the system failed them. It's obvious that there was bad faith. It is obvious that there is lack of trust. And most of it is coming from the institutions of state and the people who've put there to deal with the issue. I am clear in my mind on that. But when it comes to doctors going on strike, it's no joke. Look, I've just been going through some newspaper reports here, Daily Graphic particularly, 2007, when the health workers withdrew their services. We had a similar cycle of people who were angry and were asking for salaries to be withheld and some to be sacked and locked out and all the rest. No, it took sober minds at the end of the day to interrogate the issue and to provide the prescription.
There are those who say if the Fair Wages Commission did not respect the ruling of the National Labour Commission, that was it the 24th of November ruling 2012, if it did not respect that particular ruling, and the Labour Commission was not minded to go to court to enforce its own ruling, the doctors also had the option to hire a lawyer, go to court, and enforce the ruling.
And they didn't do that. But look, if you asked me, and I was restraining myself, but if you asked me, I'll tell you if I were in authority, and I mean higher authority, my axe will fall on those who are in charge of the institutions of states, first and foremost. I won't lie to you about that.
For what reason?
Oh, you are telling me they passed their ruling and the First Wages Commission did not respect it? I will sack you immediately. There are many more competent people out there who can work. Okay, but I didn't want to go that far because of this truce and dialogue. I wanted a certain spirit to see. Maybe next week I would have made this proposal that you have forced me to make openly. But that is the situation. Okay, when you go into the complexities of all these things, the intricacies, there's somebody somewhere who is not up to the kind of responsibility that have been entrusted to him or her to undertake. So here we are, at this stage, confronted with industrial agitation by doctors. And it isn't as if it's new, as I'm saying, 2007. And I'm just reading the graphic editorial, the things they said. Read today's graphic editorial. Almost similar. Okay, almost similar. Now, what is this that is wrong with us? That we only recycle problems? We talk about solutions that are inapplicable? It doesn't make sense to me as a country. So to be honest with you, the spirit that they developed Thursday should inform subsequent decisions. I am appealing to the doctors not to heighten.
I'm not sure if the Thursday meeting you had the representation from the doctors.
Yeah, but whatever it is, I think it's the right spirit. You could be outside that meeting, but you can feed into that spirit and ensure that they can move forward. I am saying the escalation, Monday, they shouldn't do it. Then I was going to say something which I forgot. I think they should also compromise and go for the payment in tranches. I think so.
I see.
Yeah.
But finally, to you, Kwaku, what do you say to those who say that we should crack the whip, as in government, and ensure that the laws apply equally across board? If the doctors have broken the law, we know that teachers have broken this law before and they have suffered for it. So if the doctors have broken the law, let them face the music, because there was another avenue by which they could have, come with their concerns rather than going on a strike.
What is the whipping the, not sparing the rod? What does it mean in this case? Dismissal, sacking of the doctors, prosecuting them for violating the law? That's a very interesting.
People's salaries have been withheld.
Yeah. I mean, who is going to...
For embarking on illegal strikes.
Yes, so that's the solution. You are not talking of dismissal. We are already confronted with an exodus of this level of professionals. We are already challenged. Perhaps we better look at the law again. I've been told it's one of the best labor laws. That's what I've been told on the world stage. But perhaps we should look at it. You see, there's another interesting angle. The other flip side of the coin is this: because we've put in place a legal regime that says that essential service providers should not strike or cannot strike or is illegal. Sometimes I think it breeds complacency and insensitivity in the authorities, who think that because these services are not supposed to go on strike, they become sluggish in dealing with them, knowing that the law that disables them. Have you not thought of that? That's a contributory factor. So perhaps, maybe we may have to review the law. Maybe we have to take another critical look at the law. Okay? And then my brother said it, but before him I had heard many people say that what if the police decides to go on strike? The police once upon a time in the Western region went on strike. And there were people in your party who backed them then. Okay? Of course.
The prison service, we've also had
recently.
Yeah.
The whole thing is how we even went about this SSS thing. We made it a propaganda tool and created the impression they gave one or two sectors monies and they made the whole world think that, look, the kingdom come, the world, heaven has landed on earth.
Okay.
We are part of the problem. Many of these things happening is self-inflicted.
Kwabena, what is your assessment of the development so far?
Well, before I speak to the issues, today is a very, I would say, a sober, humbling day, because our political tradition has lost two of our, I would say, unsung heroes. I should be in Elmina by now for the burial of the former Minister of Information under Dr. Buzia, Mr. T.D. Brodimens, who passed away. He was one of the pillars of our political tradition. And today also one of the senior journalists who used to be press secretary to the party in the 1996, Kwabena Semtu, is being buried today. And yes, and that's why I'm in a state of mourning. But because you insisted on me coming here at this time, from here I have to rush to
Thank you very
Elmina.
much. Thank you very much.
On the issues that we are discussing, I'm happy Kwaku virtually has captured what I was about to say. But basically, it's a human problem. I think this is a systemic failure of human management and financial management as well. Because strikes are always unfortunate when they happen. But I don't think we can immerse ourselves into legal verbiage to be able to resolve these issues. You understand? And clearly, the strikers didn't just get up without resorting to the legal procedure and just went ahead. I think they had been trying. So the issue is, who is in charge here? Governments are ultimately responsible. governments are ultimately responsible. And the style that they adopt to dialogue, the interpersonal relations, how you relate. See, when you have a whole brigade of the government coming out and posturing in the way that they have postured, it makes it very difficult for strikers or people who have grievances to sit down in an atmosphere of trust to deal.
But you acknowledge that it started with appeals until it got to a point where the government felt it was important to point out to the doctors in very clear terms that what they were doing was wrong.
First and foremost, everybody knows that strikes are wrong, strikes are unfortunate, everybody knows that. But strikes happen all over the world and happens under most governments. And Kweku talked about 2007 when we were in power, but we had to depend on the style of President Kufuor to assuage the concerns of these doctors, the way he went about it. We've had instances in the last 4 years when I've heard ministers of state on public platforms, radios, use insulting language for teachers, for nurses, and doctors. Look, we are the politicians. You have been given charge of a ministry to run, whether it's the Labour Commission. Every agency or department runs under a ministry. And when decisions have been taken, you talked about the Labour Commission having to go to court to implement their decisions. Do we have to get to that point in this country? I mean, that we have to run normal business of governance by enforcing, getting courts to enforce us to do what we are supposed to do?
An American judge says, Scalia says that America is better because most of the people respect the laws as it were.
That's what I'm saying. So we don't have to wait to go and get a court order to enforce the law. Once a decision is taken, there are responsible officers in charge. I think in this country, we tend to shy away from holding people responsible. And it's absolutely vital. Unless we do that and hold people responsible for their actions, we won't get anywhere. When things happen, nobody takes responsibility, and then we just forget it. And that's what happens in this country. It is not right. Who are the responsible officials? Who are in charge of the negotiations? What are the lapses? Why have we come this far? Then we can go to the financial side. Clearly, the government has come out through the finance minister to say there is no money. Well, that is a different question I'll come to. Why is there no money in the first place? But we'll get to that stage. But if you know there is no money, then there has to be a certain posture when you are dealing with people with grievances.
That is why you tell them that I can pay you in tranches, 3 tranches.
But before you say that, yes, no, tranches is fair. Nobody said that it's not fair. Okay, but I'm sure there are more underlying. Look, if you listen to the radio, and again, see the posture and the body language of government officials in these matters. And then also there's the mushrooming bodies who are pseudo-government or quasi-government, I don't know where they come from. They poison the atmosphere and worsen the scenario. It's totally unnecessary. You see, we've been through 1992 to 2000, 2008. I was expecting that this government, and this president especially, will learn from all the experiences that past governments have had. And there have been mistakes in the past. And you have to learn from the experiences. We are behaving as if we are starting all over again. And sometimes when I listen to, I don't know whether we can't learn from what has happened in the past and deal with these things. Of course, issues of salaries, if we were not unnecessarily political and propagandist about it, the single spine or trying to raise salaries in this country. Once upon a time, it was President Kufuor, my boss, who said, we pretend to pay workers and they pretend to work. So his vision had always been to find a way of paying people well. And that's why we went to do this single spine thing. It comes with it a huge financial outfall. There is no doubt at all about it. But there is a way of working towards it and making sure that your budget, I think right now in this country, the major problem is the incompetent financial management of our resources. That is what has brought us this far. I mean, questions have to be asked because a budget or economic management has to do with the revenue you get and the expenditure you make. And we all know what is happening. The ballooning budget deficit that we saw last year, that we cannot even explain as we speak.
That you disagree with the government's priorities does not make the managers incompetent.
No, I'm not disagreeing with priorities. No,
you're saying
I'm talking about
problem.
incompetent handling of our economy. That is what I'm talking about. That is what I'm talking. We are in this
and
country.
Your grounds is that we have a deficit.
The ballooning deficit. You run your economy on a debt sustainability ratio. Go and check what is our debt sustainability ratio right now. Our debt to GDP right now. And those are the things that you use to run your economy. You can't have a system where a deputy minister can walk into the finance ministry and go and pick up 400,000 Ghana cedis cash that he's going to run adverts. Is that financial administration? We have in this country where a presidential staffer can go and pick 160,000 Ghana cedis from the cash. Not that you are working with invoices and get the system to pay. I mean, financial administration has gone totally out of the window. I mean, the kinds of stories you hear about the way money is being committed, there is no doubt that they will run in Ghana will become broke. You can't do that. I mean, issues today, in fact, this government is lucky because at least there's a new revenue stream. However small it may be, oil is on stream. We are making more revenue than in the past. And again, that's why I kept saying you have to look at what is coming in and what is going out. Over the last 4 or 5 years, the amount of loans and grants that we have received far outstrips whatever we've seen before then, putting all governments together. You understand? And still there is no cash to pay workers. There is no cash to do this. So there is a lot wrong with the financial administration of this country, financial planning. And I think that incompetence has to stop. And we have to prioritize. And so that for me is the issue. As for wages and strikes, these are things that happen all over the country.
Okay.
But it's how you manage it. I mean, for instance, if you look at a state entity like CMB, not long ago, and I saw a publication in one of the papers, CMB is on a limp. CMB is on a limp. CMB that used to attract, creditors, without let, to the extent that when they were issuing bonds to be able to go and buy cocoa, it was oversubscribed. Today they are struggling. And why are they struggling? Because there has been maladministration of their finances during this NDC administration. Okay, so there's a lot of work that has to be done.
Hold on briefly for me. There's this other angle to this whole debate about the strikes, not only by the doctors, but by teachers and also now judicial staff. And there are those who have suggested that this can plunge this country into a state of chaos. Some have not minced words in using the word coup d'etat. Dr. Michael Pesawite joins us on the line. He is with the Institute of African Studies. Good morning, Doc, for joining us on the line.
Good morning.
Okay, now, when you hear people make suggestions that the strikes, that are coming up, the demonstrations that we are hearing about in London and some also intended to come on here in Ghana, the police is stopping them, all of that, does it give you an impression or does it get you to agree with those who suggest that we are preparing the grounds for a coup d'etat?
No, I completely disagree with the gentleman who has so far made a comment suggesting that the labor unrest and the various developments across different parts of the country in relation to our country are a recipe for a military coup. I think that democracy allows for some of these social unrest, and democracies have mechanisms for addressing some of these social unrest as well. Democracies do not suggest that we will not have problems. Democracies exist because they provide us with the mechanisms to solve whatever problems we confront as a society. And so far, in all the different situations that I believe have involved our country, be it from the electoral petition through the various labor agitations, I believe that there are mechanisms, there are different forms of negotiations, there are different forms of dialogue that are going on to ensure that they are resolved. It is these processes that eventually strengthens our democracy.
Dr. Michael Pesawite, sorry, but the line is very terrible. we'll try and get it cleared and get him back on the line. Whilst we try to get him back, I was with Kobna, but I'd like to have your take on that issue. You've heard at least about there's a retired, military officer who is suggested so. You have heard about Mr. Jampo, who has also said these are the indicators. Anytime there's a coup, these are the things we have seen. And you've heard the NPP's one of its officers in abroad also suggests that this is where we are gradually getting to. I'll come to you, but briefly.
Well, Sammy, I think that some of these predictions are unfortunate. You heard Dr. White's take on how democracies function. People can have dissenting views on issues. The good thing about democracies is that you are able to freely express your views without the fear that the following morning, after you have so expressed those views, you are arrested, detained, tortured, and so on and so forth, because you have expressed a view which is distasteful to the people who are in authority. Now, we are talking about agitations on the labor front. There are laid-down procedures for seeking redress, where some of these labor unions think that they haven't been treated fairly. Now, democracy gives us all these opportunities. That is why I didn't mince words in saying that, look, as a country, we must all learn to ensure that our laws are enforced.
Okay, but
we didn't just enact them for nothing.
You have gotten to a situation where clearly the laws have been suspended.
Well, but that notwithstanding, I think that the parties involved are negotiating, they are talking, and so we are hoping that these issues can be resolved amicably. Now, if they are not resolved amicably, I have heard some people suggest that let us exact punitive measures and so on. I don't think that we should go there. The issues can be resolved amicably, but it's regrettable for people to liken what is happening now to a coup situation. Why are we talking about coup d'etats? How long has this president been in power? He's still constituting his government. And already we are talking about coups because we have agitations on the labor front. I think that these remarks are regrettable, and some of the people who think that, look, we are getting close to having coups in this country should be seriously interrogated. Because I don't see how serious or how bad the situation has gotten to warrant those comments from those commentators. I heard about the demonstration in the US. It is very unfortunate.
In the UK?
In the UK, sorry, it's very unfortunate. And if there's any political party in this country with any associations with the person who organized the demonstration, I would expect them to come out openly and denounce him.
I see. So the police, or is it the national security, for example, should be inviting chairman of the NPP's UK Ireland branch, that's Attack Crowfire, is that how his name is mentioned? And ask him what? That because he said that the harsh conditions, if they are not reversed, coup is imminent.
Is that the way to go? His remarks are unfortunate. He is predicting a coup in this country. He's an Ireland branch chairman of the MPP. I expect the MPP to come out and speak. Call him to order. And if he's not ready to come out and
you are going,
explain himself.
Fortunately, you are going to the Interior Ministry. I'm asking if they should invite people like this and the other retired military officer and ask them what?
Well, I can't sit here and make those statements. I mean, statements which obviously have security implications. I won't make them, on this forum. But the point I'm making is that this person is an activist of the New Patriotic Party. He's the party chairman in the UK. Now, if he comes out and makes these doomsday prophecies that, given what is happening currently in Ghana, we're likely to have a coup, I would expect his political masters to call him to order. A statement ought to be issued by the MPP administration denouncing those comments, because we as a people in 92 took the collective decision to have a constitutional democracy in this country. Now, if things are not going on well, why do we have political parties? Why is the MPP an opposition party, the PNC? They are all there with competing ideas to try to wrestle power from the ruling party. So if things are not going on well, it is their duty to hold the government in check. You don't start talking about coups. I thought we've gone past that stage.
I see.
Those remarks were irresponsible, and with one voice, we must roundly condemn them.
Something with respect, I think I take a little exception to the way you took. I mean, I was on the floor discussing, we were talking about strikes, and where you just shifted the argument to coup plot mongering. You see, there are certain things that sometimes they are better left disregarded. You understand what I mean? Coups are in our past. Even the African Union suspends member countries who engage in that activity. Please, let's not, we have a serious issue, let's discuss it and look at ways of resolving those issues. Instead of flying a kite and talk about people speculating about coups. First and foremost, those who plan coups don't sit on air to talk about their plan for coups. You understand? And the history of this country, very few civilians have planned coups because you don't have access to armaments and the wherewithal to be able to take military action. It is the soldiers who do so. So please, let's not deviate from what we are discussing. And I haven't fully read the text of what Atakufi said. And in any case, a demonstration is the right of people. You cannot say that we should condemn a demonstration. They went and expressed their opinion about what is going on in the country. And so that is not a regrettable event. It's part of politicking. So that for me is my disagreement with you. I haven't seen the full text of what he said. I don't think he said there's an imminent coup or he's planning a coup or he's wishing for a coup. I haven't read it. I don't want to comment on it. And in any case, please, let's focus on what is happening. We have a situation here where the country's resources quietly being frittered away with reckless abandon, and we are not discussing that. And that is the very central issue. The issue of oil revenue. Where is it going to? How is GMPC on their own disbursing our monies? They are whims and caprices. We can't. Those are the things we should look at, because if the nation has money in our treasury, it's not only doctors and teachers. Last week, contractors were threatening to block roads in this country. Some contractors are in arrears over 2 years. District Assembly Common Fund in arrears, several months in arrears. So we have a financial mismanagement problem. Our expenditure and income are not in sync. But the treasury in this country or the finance ministry cannot say that they are not taking revenue. They are taking revenue. So what is happening to the use of that revenue? Are we prioritizing properly?
They are taking revenue. So you're saying you don't believe the minister when he says that we cannot afford to pay, for example, what the doctors are demanding lump sum.
You see, we are not Englishmen, but we can dabble in English language. When you say you cannot afford to pay, that is understandable. When you say there is no cash, at least that's what the graphic reports.
But he's giving you a plan.
that's what the pay. Yeah, so that I don't have a problem with that. And I think that our brothers and sisters who are doctors, and I know they are reasonable enough. That is why they started this tiered process of, okay, let's work to rules, so and so, because they understand that they are an emergency service. And that when they withdraw their services abruptly, people may lose their lives. The impact on society is very difficult. And that's why we always plead and encourage them.
Kuku says they should compromise. Do you subscribe to that?
I subscribe to that. I think that the government should be upfront, honest, and say, look, we are in serious financial times. I'm sure it's their own making, because we all know the way they mismanaged the economy the last 6 months of the year, to the extent that a lot of the deficit occurred between June and December.
About your point of mismanagement, they disagree with you.
Why? These are issues, first and foremost, for Christ's sake. Why is the House of Parliament probing SADA? I mean, the use of our resources. You go and buy a share of a private enterprise with 15 million of our country's money. What is the worth of the enterprise itself? What was the advice that way? So we are talking about financial administration. What we do with the little money that we have. We are financially stressed. And so therefore you have to act in a prudent manner, in a careful manner.
If you take the SADA example, this is an entity in the very nascent stages. They have demonstrated to you by way of full disclosure that we have steps that we are taking, we have a plan we are working at, and this is the point at which we're expecting to get into production. They haven't gotten there yet. So
you commit 15 million Ghana cedis is $7 million. At least I have a little modicum of knowledge on project management. And you are talking about a poultry facility, and you are talking $7 million. At least I want to see something that shows that we have deployed $7 million. And what they are showing comes nowhere near that. For Christ's sake, let's be honest with ourselves. And I'm not using that as the main whipping stick. No.
They say they're going to have it all over the SADA zones, scattered all over 50
I just use that
so.
as an example. I don't want you to dwell on it.
Okay.
I'm talking about financial impropriety in the main, and that we have to look at after our money better. Once we do so, first, even the doctors will recognize that, look, we are in tight times, we are all Ghanaians, the money is not there, you explain yourself properly, you dialogue, okay, we'll try and give it to you in tranches. And it's the body language thing. It's the way you communicate and dialogue with them. If you jump on radio stations and you have your agents coming with sticks, I'm saying so figuratively, because our friend here sits here and says, oh, it's illegal. Yes, it may be illegal. But other agents of state, as Kwaku has said, have also infringed the law. So let's not immerse ourselves in legal verbiage, as I said earlier. Let's find a way of resolving this issue. Now we are saying this week, we are hoping that they don't step it up. They should not step it up, because as for medical services, if you step up the strikes, it becomes really burdensome on the people of Ghana. I am hoping that the government will adopt a better way of dealing with the situation, because they are human beings, they are Ghanaians. I believe all of us are patriots, but they deserve their money. And if we don't have it immediately, let's find a way of talking to them in a very humane manner that they will find acceptable. That is how we have to go about it.
All right. Thank you very much, Kwabena Agyapong. I'm going back to the phone lines to now speak to Dr. Michael Pesawai. Thank you very much, Dr. White. Unfortunately, it appears the line is so terrible.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Dr. White, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, but it appears the line is still very bad. Okay. Yes. Now you were responding to the question about the sentiments that have been expressed by at least some 3 individuals that we are aware of, to the effect that these strikes, if they continue in the manner they are, then we'll be heading to chaos.
Yes. I think that those comments, and whether they are suggestions or comments or fears that people are expressing, are very, very unfortunate, largely because, as I indicated before the lines went bad, we need to recognize that in a democracy, we have mechanisms that resolve problems. And when we have problems, we don't have to rush to the conclusion that maybe chaos and disorder in the form of a military coup is a preferred option. I want to suggest, or I want to believe that the labor unrest are being addressed, and we have heard it in the media quite a number of times. I want to believe that people who speak on these issues are speaking as a result of either their frustrations or are providing information to the public. This in no way should be misconstrued to mean chaos, or should be misconstrued to mean that we are in a crisis situation, for which reason people should be contemplating or even be speculating about the possibility of a military coup. And I believe that all political parties and civil society organizations should come around and then condemn these kinds of comments. In any case, I think that for those of us who observe the political scene, the Ghanaian military has become so professional in so many ways that I don't think that they will pause for a moment, or they will even reflect on the possibility of getting involved in politics. There are military officers now that have opportunities to become lawyers, to become engineers, to become doctors, and so on and so forth. And so the world of the military itself has changed to the extent that military coup, I don't believe, should become it's something that we should be contemplating in our society.
But those who make these projections, as it were, not exactly projections, but they are warning, send this warning. They are relying on history, isn't it?
Yes, but they also need to keep in mind that...
And history is a very good teacher.
They have to keep in mind that the historical context has also changed. In those days, in almost all the military coups that we have experienced in the past, you had only one radio station and a few state-owned media newspapers. Military officers go there and then they announce that they have a coup. Currently, we have over 300 radio stations across this country. We have a number of television stations. The point I'm trying to make is that the terrain has changed. So anybody who wants to rely on history needs to also look at the socio-cultural and political context within which the reliance on history is situated. And once you are very conversant with that terrain, you will realize that it's not going to be possible. The second point is that in those days, there were no civil society organizations to resist. Today, we have over thousands of civil society organizations in this country that clearly believe that democratic norms and democratic ways of doing things are the best. So that no matter how the discontent and no matter how much fears people have, we must stick to the democratic principles and tenets, because we have seen it before, and I believe that nobody in this country will want to get back to that. So people should not be making comments that will compel or that will suggest to any officer that we probably are calling for that kind of system. I don't think that is what this country deserves.
All right, finally, very finally, for example, somebody like Captain Kumsin, a retired officer of the Ghana Armed Forces, Captain Bedu Kumsin, he believes that the prevailing conditions in the country make the staging of a coup imminent. Then you have people like Sekou, who says, for example, that the NDC is enticing the military with an immediate coup d'etat. You also have the other gentleman, the NPP's Ireland branch chair, Atta Crofai, who also suggested that if things are not done to reverse the situation now, harsh conditions now, a coup could be imminent. Now, James Agalga says that these people ought to be invited and questioned by the security. Do you buy this proposal?
Well, I think, first of all, let me say that those individuals should rather spend their time providing ideas and suggestions on how we can deal with the current crisis, rather than sitting on the fence and postulating that it is possible that the conditions now, are ripe for a coup. I do agree with James that we should not take the comments of these individuals lightly. Is it possible that they themselves are involved in planning something? Are they aware of something that the country is not aware of? In what ways? Where do they get their evidence from? And so I think that it is right and proper for the security service.
Are you suggesting, for example, that it is not justified for these individuals to have the fears that they are expressing?
It is fully justified for them to have the fear they are expressing.
So if they have them, they shouldn't express them?
No, listen, the point is not that they should be arrested. The point is that they should be invited so that if they can aid the security agencies in accessing information that they have that the security agencies do not have, that will be in the greater interest of the country. So you need to separate the difference here. The idea is not to arrest them. The idea is to invite them to help solve a problem that they are probably anticipating.
All right. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we still don't have that good line on to continue with the discussion. Thank you, but I'll move to Abdul Malik now. You make a minute's reaction, then I go to Abdul Malik.
Listening to Kobda, he seems to suggest that the body language and posture of certain agents of people in authority, it does not augur well for negotiations, because they seem to be talking about illegality, and so on. Let me say that, yes, this admonition is welcome, but we should treat it as an admonition. We should, apply to all. I read about the remarks made by somebody like Maxwell Kofi Juma, when he descended heavily on the doctors and said they shouldn't compare themselves to MPs and so on. I think that is exactly, the kind of body language and statements which must be discouraged. It should be across board.
Okay, thank you.
No,
Abdul Malik.
No, please. What's the effect of what you're saying? See, first and foremost, Maxwell Fijima is not in any authority now. We are having a government dealing with issues of strike. And I'm saying that the posture of the government and their agents, what Maxwell Fijima says has nothing to do with this negotiation.
This admonition should cut across board.
You know what, my good brother?
Let's apply this to all.
You see, if we don't stop this kind of political posturing, when at the least opportunity we are looking to have some political advantage or credit or to discredit somebody because this was MPP's NDC, and we don't deal with the real issues that we face as a country, we are not likely to make a lot of progress.
Thank you for that intervention, though. Yeah.
Interesting. You know, I haven't, to be honest with you, had the benefit of reading what the NPP chap in the UK is supposed to have said. I've just seen headlines in some of the newspapers, coup d'etat imminent, so and so and so. And the Captain Kumsin, I haven't heard at all. It's the first time I'm hearing. But I still think, and they appear to not be talking of only the industrial agitation. They're talking of other, things of corruption, mismanagement, economic. They were putting it all together and looking at what used to happen previously and projecting. I think that's the voice of the lunatic fringe of our political system. They are relics of history. 2007, March, when this country was confronted with similar agitations, I recall my own good old friend, a former deputy minister of defense, boldly, and this gentleman, I'm sure you know, I don't want to mention his name, he was a former deputy defense minister from the NDC's table, openly and boldly told the whole world that Ghana was ripe for 10 coup d'etats. We took him on. We charged at him and insisted that there was no basis for what he was saying. Unfortunately, I didn't hear anybody from within the NDC's table cautioning him and asking for him to be invited by the security services. And that's the problem I have with our politics. The selectivity, that selective amnesia, it doesn't help anybody. I'm not too sure you can invite these people for them to assist investigations or interrogation of the issue in any manner. What they've said, if we read the text and they were asking for a coup, we can condemn them. They are not, there was this thing about my mouth no began. You see, we should be very careful. We dragged Kennedy Chapon talking of treason, high treason, all that. You know what happened? We all sat here and said, look, it doesn't fit. So let's be very careful how we go about some of these issues. Clearly, Ghanaian soldiers and the Ghanaian people would not endorse a coup d'etat. Look, the manifest unsustainability of it in today's politics is the real deterrence. It won't happen. Or if it happens, it cannot be sustained for even a week. And take a look at those coup makers, with the exception of one, who I keep on saying is the most fortunate or the luckiest Ghanaian. Where is Kutuga? Where is Afrifa? Where is Kutu Achampon? Did you see how they died? Take a look at it and ask yourself questions. You live by the sword or you come by the sword, you will die by the sword. That is the experience that coup making has shown. There's only one exception. And he is damn lucky because we are all compromising and protecting this constitution. And he also comes from your stable. I believe this is a bit of a diversion and a digression. Let me be honest with you. That is a fact. In sentiment, I'm with Kwabena on it. But unfortunately, Kwabena, some of those gentlemen made these comments around these issues. And I suspect that's the basis for why our host brought it in.
Don't worry.
No,
right,
so to be honest, that is my take on this matter.
Okay.
You know, as for attitude, body language, and again, that too cuts across our history. Look, the CPP arm was very, very pro-labor. indeed, at one stage, the TUs was an integral part of the CPP. And in the course of the decolonization exercise, there was almost a fusion between the labor, ex-servicemen, and the party known as the CPP. But something happened. You remember 1960-61, the railways agitation, the strike. Nkrumah was then in the Soviet Union. And one top minister, out of anger, described them as despicable rats. And it was perceived as an attempt to overthrow the Nkrumah government. And indeed, we ended up picking some of the union leaders under PDA. Subsequent, under Champo, similar things happened. Indeed, Governor, in 2007, when the health workers went on strike, the Labour Commission, of course, declared it illegal, asked them to return to work, and instead even threatened to withhold their salaries. If you look at graphic, Saturday, March 10, it says strike in bad faith, call it off, Commission tells health workers. But the most interesting one, 2 days subsequent to that, March 12, 2007, you are dismissed. Ministry tells striking health workers not as post as from March 6th. And listen, the Ministry of Health has stated that any health worker who was not at post as from March 6, 2007 should consider himself or herself dismissed. A letter dated March 5, 2007 and signed by the Chief Director of the Ministry, MND Jawula, on behalf of the Sector Minister, consequently directed all heads of health institutions to compile a list of recalcitrant staff to be forwarded to the Comptroller and Accountant General to stop their salaries immediately. Reacting to the ministry's directive, the chairman of the Health Workers Group, Raymond A. Tete, described the move as an empty threat. We are not worried at all. We don't even consider secular as a threat. He rebuffed it with the Daily Graphic when the Daily Graphic spoke to him. He argued that there were laid down requirements for firing health workers, saying the approach resorted to by the ministry was not one of such requirements. Let me finish. Although Mr. Tete could not be specific, he said a member of staff could only be sacked if he or she absented himself or herself for about 2 weeks, and considering the fact that the strike was barely 1 week old and so unilateral, the ministry's directive was inappropriate.
Okay.
So you see that even if you want to dismiss, there are certain procedures and circumstances that can drive that particular thing.
Okay, we'll take a quick break. We'll return to the solutions and the suggestions that have come up that have been termed as solutions so far, and then move on to the election related issue. We'll be right back after this break. You're welcome back to Newsfile on your Joy News channel on Multi TV and also on Joy 99.7 FM, and we are heard across the country and all over the world on the World Wide Web. And some of your messages coming in respect of solutions. And Ni Dodu says that when government stops approving huge severance fees for MPs without crying, but start wailing when other professionals like the doctors are demanding for more pay, that is the problem. And you say, if indeed there is no money, then why are they paying huge ex gratia to the MPs? How did they find that money? Now, Ni Amponsa Ankra writes, the solution is simple. We need competent hands to handle the affairs in Ghana. Never in the history of Ghana have we seen such labor unrest. God bless our homeland, Ghana. And then Prince Champong writes, how can the government find GH 39 million to pay the ex gratia of Article 71 holders, but can't find GH 10 million to pay the UTAG members? Very funny. Okay. And Bright writes, no amount of hardship in Ghana can justify a coup. I disagree with James that the demonstrations in the UK should be condemned. It is a guaranteed constitutional right. I also disagree with Kwabna that the coup mongers be ignored. We should repeatedly denounce them and assure them that they stand alone on the subject. If there is all-round condemnation of such comments, they will stop making them. And then I have Kweku Kodia. He says, Samson, let the government have right priorities. Our priorities must be on scale of preference. And he puts in bracket a want or need list in order of importance. Doctors, teachers, including JUSAG members, among others, are on strike, and government shows commitment in redressing our confirmed issues. It shows our priorities as a nation. All right. We will deal 5 minutes each to my guest, and then we'll deal with the solutions. There have been suggestions about total decentralization of the health system, so that the various institutions like Kolebu, Komfanoche, Tamale Teaching Hospital will be autonomous, and then they can take charge of their own affairs without government having to come in. I want to know what my guests think about such solutions. Already, Kweku and Kwabna and James all agree that the doctors must compromise at this point. Now, I'll start with Kweku. What do you make of these suggestions by way of solution, permanent solution?
Well, I am not too sure that we would have a situation where we might never have industrial agitation. I'm not too sure. That's an ideal that would take us 1,000 years, if not more, to achieve. So I'm not going to go in that direction. But we should try as much as possible, and restore trust in the system. Okay? Perhaps we may even have to look at the law again, and see whether it is feasible. I mean, whether the law has a stance, because as I said, there are people who may be exploiting the fact that we have put in the law that certain people cannot go on strike, and then decide to be sluggish when they are negotiating with those sectors, which then leads to a situation where those sectors decide that, look, ignore the law, and then we have almost a lawless situation. So we may have to look at that side too. That subculture of allowing arrears to accumulate for a year and beyond, it makes no sense to me. I don't see how we cannot deal with that issue, so that too much, we should find ways and means of stopping the accumulation of arrears over a period of thing. But bottom line, let me be honest with you, is the prudent management of public funds. It's the bottom line. We need to instill some fiscal discipline in how we manage public resources. Because it is true, even though it is not very scientific to do a relationship that, why have MPs been paid and teachers have not been paid? In any case, it is not even true that the MPs were paid a lump sum. I mean, these are facts which people have distorted, and some people are ignoring even the explanation. I agree, the way that package was announced without the appropriate details and the components clarified created a mess. So you can blame those who even issued it at the time they did without much clarity. But the truth has subsequently come out. If you break it down, find the formula and find the components, it's not a big deal.
This is what Bryce Simmons of Imani thinks is the immediate solution to the current impasse. And he says, I have a radical idea. Maybe it is completely dumb. If it is, just feel free and say so, more especially if you have experience in Ghana's finance matters. The way I see it, the whole impasse comes down to the doctors not believing that the government will pay what it has promised it will pay. Mind you, government is not saying that it has no intention to pay the money. It is only asking for time. So simple. Just craft an irrevocable promissory note underwritten by a commercial bank, made out in the name of the Medical Association, to be redeemed at those points in the future. The government has promised to pay the money. Yes, it will cost a bit more in fees, but this is substantially different from a bond or bill of exchange and should be less complicated to design.
And this is to be replicated relative to all other sectors who go on strike.
Let's get the doctors back.
No, I'm just asking. So I'm looking for the sustainability. It's quite a brilliant idea, but sustainability. You see, yes, very interesting. I haven't thought of that, but and that's coming from quite a brilliant, critical mind. I read him off and on. I think it's a very critical mind. But I asked, would it be, replicated when we have such situations, and how sustainable? If he can convince me, I will join him in advocating it.
Okay.
Yes. Sabi, I think that largely the problem has to do with mistrust, and he talked about that. He also mentioned it in passing. All I would say...
Something also that's a failure on the part of the government.
Well...
Through its various agencies, including the Fair Wages Commission.
I would like to make a humble and passionate appeal to the doctors to rescind their decision for now, at least accept payment in tranches. As the money man rightly put it, government is not saying, we won't pay. Government has admitted that, yes, some arrears are outstanding, but we're saying that, look...
But there's another point to what he's saying, that they don't trust that you will pay.
No.
So simple. Create a financial instrument by which they know that willy-nilly they'll get the money at the bank.
Well,
if you like, go borrow.
But we are talking about government here. We are talking about a government which has just taken over power. It made certain campaign promises. So why would you go and negotiate and renege on the promises?
We're also talking about a government which are just taking power and could find 39 million Ghana cedis to pay MPs ex gratia.
Well, Sami, it's not ex gratia, it's gratuity. What has been paid to the members of parliament is gratuity. It is something which is constitutional. And we must all acknowledge one thing, that the MPs you see retire without pension. It's a serious matter.
Don't go there, because we'll have a different discussion.
We'll have another. No. I just wanted to clarify this whole issue. Because if we make it look as if it's ex gratia, then it comes with a certain tag. But in actual fact, the thing is a gratuity. Let's not even go there for now. But all I want to say is that, look, this government came into power and decided that, look, it was time to implement the single spine pay policy, which was started by the MPP. And so there is no denying the fact that, yes, this policy came about because we all as a country felt that, look, it was time to ameliorate the suffering of those who work for us. Now we've implemented this, and that particular policy contributed in no small way towards creating the budget deficit that Kobna would want to have us think that it was as a result of mismanagement. No. If you look at the figures, if you look at this year's budget, more than 70% of all revenue generated, was spent on salaries. What it simply means is that...
The president said more than 60%.
70.
Okay.
70 was used to service salaries of workers in the public sector. Now, Sami, if this is anything to go by, you understand why government is saying that, look, there is no money. We don't want to create another deficit situation on our hands. So we're saying that let's do it in tranches. And that is the more reason why we must all understand that the government is working within certain constraints to try to ensure that we balance the equation in all the sectors. Now, if we're to go on paying the way we proceeded the last time and created that deficit, how are we going to get money to build our roads?
I see.
To put up schools and so on. So, Sami, the point I'm making is that let's be patient. This government has put in place measures to ensure that we expand our revenue base so that we can collect more taxes from the corporate entities and so on. Now, when we do this...
Your colleague, the deputy health minister designate, who was vetted, suggested that the way to go permanently is to decentralize the hospitals. How? Do you support that?
Well, Sami, these are views that the deputy minister designate has espoused.
That's the advice he's going to give to the minister. That's what he said.
I mean, he's the deputy.
He said you
minister.
decentralize them, make them autonomous, let them take charge of remuneration for.
In the long term, we could consider that idea, but in the short term, I would say, as a social democrat, that there are certain dangers that could be associated with decentralizing the health delivery system. What happens if, at that level, the hospitals are not able to generate the resources that would be required to ensure that they run efficiently? So you fall back on central government. That, in the long term, could be an option. But for now, I'm saying that let us expand our revenue base to be able to pay arrears and make...
Thank you, James. Governor.
Well, first and foremost, we all understand that the country has changed. I mean, the structure of the country, the media, everything. But we should stop governing on radio. We can run this country on radio. And that is why it's very important that when you are in office, yes, it is important for you to issue out relevant, appropriate information for the people of Ghana to know. But you cannot be having a banter and virtually doing your dialogue on radio and taking pot shots at each other. It is not worth it. That's why I talked about body language. And I expect that we should learn from experience. I mean, Kweku read something in 2007 when we were in government, which I found very interesting. So I expect that the NDC government will learn that if that did not work, you don't come and repeat it.
The president didn't allow that
to happen. That's why eventually I said the president could use his own maturity and diplomacy to handle the situation. So you expect that you benefit from that hindsight, that you don't repeat same and have people then attacking doctors or so and so. Yes, we know strikes are in the main, according to our law, illegal, so and so. They are unfortunate, but I think the human angle is critical.
Okay.
For me, there are issues of the state that, although I belong to a right, or I'm a center right anyway, that I think governments should always have an influencing. I don't buy this talk about autonomy, so that may be a personal position. Because I think issues of the health of our nation, and you want to leave it in the hands of some people, say they want to administer. The hospitals are different. Their catchment areas are different. The economics are different. Some may survive, some may collapse. That is not what we want. What we need is efficiency and effectiveness and prudent management of our resources, because it is scanty. That is what it is. So let's look at that. That is the solution. Right now, I find my friend from Imani very interesting. It's like issuing a post-dated check. That's it. But it's a very dangerous precedent sometimes. You know? And then when the check starts bouncing...
He spoke about an irrevocable promissory note.
Oh, yes, like an irrevocable... I know, once it's still a check. It's a money financial instrument, you know. It's an interesting thing, but it's all down to trust and postures and getting people to buy in that, look, we are in this together, there are difficult times, and so therefore, please, let's accept so and so. Then stop the fringe from shouting on the radio stations, attacking people and running them down. Then they are more liable to accept these things. But we hope that our friends, especially the doctors, would show a little mercy and not step it up.
Okay, thank you very much. I go through a few text messages here and then we'll move to the next subject, and we are joined also by our other panelists. Now, this one from Chumesi in Kede, he writes, he says, please, let's stop the legality or illegality of strikes and solve the problems, because there are problems to be solved. Now, Papa Krachi writes from DSO. He says, if there is no money... Diaso. Okay. He says, if there is no money, does that mean the doctors should stay in their homes for people to die? Then Admuda in Wa writes, the government has committed and perpetuated much illegality than the doctors, because the government disobeyed the NLC ruling and has not addressed the grievances of the essential service providers. What kind of government will blatantly disregard the laws of the land to this extent? Ni Inla writes, why does it seem the Labour Commission has a tendency of pushing employees to do the right thing but do very little to push the employers to do same. This tendency is worrying. Najib in Yendi writes, if government knows that the doctors' strike is unconstitutional, then they should send them to court. Okay, that's also another discussion. But I've heard some say that because the government will not go to court with clean hands, and you know, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands, it is unable to go to court to do anything. Because first of all, they had a ruling and you're supposed to enforce it. Tony in Sunyani writes, the NDC government must stop the annoyance on the illegality of strikes and give workers their due. Malik Bediako in Adisco writes, all the talking and quotes of the labor law will not help. The only solution is that the politicians will stop sharing our monies among themselves, and there will be peace in the land. I'll take a final two messages from Kweku Safo Adai. He says something, it is unfortunate our dedicated doctors who work in our villages, towns, cities, treating the masses from the ghettos to the apartments under such harsh conditions should be treated the way is being done now. Let us as a people not bargain our health. And last one from Samuel Bryan Boabing in Awoshi. He says, strike here, strike there, strike everywhere, all because of a stolen verdict. Money of these public expenditures were used to purchase the sovereign will of the people. And as a result, we are all bearing the brunt of the despicable actions. Maybe this very one, I said the final one, but let me read this very final one from Kweku. He says that we have to differentiate between the fears people have about coups and people wishing to have a coup. The fact that some people express concern that this is the kind of situation which in the past had led to coups does not mean that this is what they wish for. It is a caution, a warning. You don't condemn someone who cautions you. You take corrective measures to make it unnecessary. Thank you very much. And those were your views and comments on the first issue that we discussed. Okay, my guest who came in late wants to have his bite on this issue before. Let me give you 3 minutes solutions, and we'll move to the next issue.
Solutions.
Okay,
thank you.
That is Chum Berema. He's a legal practitioner and with the NDC communications team.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and to my listeners for being late. I had to attend to court.
Okay.
Indeed, we're talking about the labor unrest, and we've heard in the media about the unions not trusting government. But we recall that the single spine was implemented way back from 2010. Last year, a large chunk of public sector workers were placed on the single spine. Arrears were paid right from 2010. There was a timetable. The government delivered on the timetable. Okay, so if the government today again gives a timetable for payment of same arrears, then I think that the government is believable. And number two, we're talking about the essential services. Now, even in the Labor Act itself, there are certain workers who are not allowed to be unionized. Management can apply to the chief labor officer and say that this category of workers cannot be unionized. Who are they? They are also categorized in the same essential kind of services that they are providing. You see, if a worker is in charge of your data and then the person joins a strike, he can bring down the company totally. So the law allows that such people are not even, do not join the union. So if we say that medical service and certain other workers are essential service, we must understand it from the broad, Labor Act.
But you also understand that by the same Labor Act, there is a speedy process by which their concerns are supposed to be addressed.
That is
true. That is why the option of strike has been taken away from them.
It is. You see, last year when the doctors embarked upon strike on the interim market premium, and they went to the Labour Commission. Initially, they were afraid that the Labour Commission, being some kind of government agency, would rule against them. What did they get? They got judgment against the Fair Wages Commission, and the Fair Wages Commission had to pay what the Labour Commission, ordered. This time around, what are we seeing? The same Labour Commission gives an order, and then, having not exhausted the rules, the workers go on strike. This is not correct. There's some kind of unfairness here. When you were given a ruling, the fair wages gave it to you on the market premiums.
But that's what it's supposed to be. If the fair wages respects the ruling, there will not be problem.
They have respected the ruling.
No, this time they have not.
They have. They have respected the ruling, even if they have not.
It appears you are the only one who has this information. The fair wages itself admits that it's not going to implement that ruling.
If it said it wasn't going to implement the ruling, the government would have come out to say that it is going to pay over a period. No. You see, what is happening is that they want the money now. As for payment, yes, it has been agreed. But the government is saying that let me pay you over 3 tranches. So there's an acceptance of an order, you see. And if the Labour Commission, the fair wages had not even accepted the order, there was another way to go, you see, to exhaust the procedure, but not to resort to strike. And as we know, as for strike actions, they are always with Labour. You cannot take away strike action.
So what's your solution now? There are many people who think that if you don't divest yourself of the legality, you won't get anywhere.
Well, that is true because it's a human relationship issue. That is why they went for that meeting. They all decided to call for a media truce. It's a way to go. Okay. They know that. So that's solution number one. What else do you suggest? Well, then talking about the hospitals running their having the autonomy. I also share the same view. The private hospitals now run. Some are making profit. At least some are breaking even. You understand it? Have we asked ourselves, the monies that the NHIS pay to the government hospitals, what the monies are used for? There have been suggestions that, let them use their IGF to pay their doctors, and then government will reimburse. You get it? That is also one good way. Why is it not happening? So if they have that autonomy to employ their doctors, even if government is paying, government can assign its negotiation role to the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. But what we will have is that all the doctors in the various hospitals will be employed by the hospital. They have their letters of employment and all. And at least we will have good negotiations, not when on the doctors' front, when you explain to some of the doctors, they think that,
But the point is that if you leave the hospitals to make their own money to pay their employees, your grandmother in the village may not be able to attend hospital.
No, that is what the NHI is taking care of. You get it. Then you just go, the NHI is paying.
Will pay realistically for the services provided.
Exactly.
I see.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Chumberima. He's with the NDC communication team and he's a legal practitioner. Now we move to the next vexed matter, that is in the Supreme Court. Now, if the Supreme Court were to endorse the conclusions of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's affidavit, John Mahama would manage only 39.17% of the total valid votes cast, counted, and certified. I'm taking my time because I want you to get the thrust of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's affidavit. Then Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo would jump up to winning ways with 59.55%. The question is, the legal team of the NDC contends that these affidavits are a rehash of an empty petition. The EC, as we speak, is also being hounded with alleged 100,000 plus, or is it a 700 plus, 700 plus ghost diaspora voters. Now, the election petition and the matters arising. It's a tall order. James, you have been reading the Dr. Bawumia affidavit, and this affidavit was sworn on behalf of himself, Nana Akufo-Addo, and Jake Obeche-Belamte. And all they are saying in the end is that if you annul the number of votes that they have they are found should be annulled according to law, you are going to have John Mahama come to 39%, and Akufo-Addo will rise to 59%.
Yes, thank you, Sami. First of all, I would agree with the position taken by some legal experts that the affidavit filed is a rehash of the petition itself. I have gone through the affidavit of Dr. Baumia for the first time and simply do not see any new issues arising in that affidavit as opposed to what they have pleaded, in the petition itself. What that simply tells you is that, yes, they found it necessary to adopt this procedure because of the directive issued by the Supreme Court. But for that directive, all the things, the positions in this affidavit would have come to the court in the form of an oral testimony, to be given by Dr. Baumia or whichever witnesses they would parade to prosecute their case. Now, Sami, having said that, I am a lawyer and do not feel very comfortable descending into the merits or otherwise of the petition and the responses filed in opposition to the petition itself.
I will not also encourage anyone getting into the merits, would say, because I could equally be hauled before the courts for contempt.
All I will say is that everything is set for the trial to commence.
But you made a comment. You said you don't find anything new. I wanted to point you to something if you felt that was not anything new. For example, they say that the scrutiny of some of the voter ID numbers supposedly belonging to some of the foreign registered voters could not be found on the general voters register. That is to say, they were /are fake identities. Then they look at examples where you have as many as 51 instances of repeated names to a total of 102. And you have one person who is named as a male, giving, registered, and the same person is registered again as a female somewhere, and you have 51 of such instances. And I wanted to find out from you if you thought that was not new and it doesn't make any difference at all.
No, not at all. If you look at the amended petition, you'd find that all these things have been pleaded. That is why we're saying that it's a rehash of the petition itself. But beyond that, these are depositions in an affidavit.
That is so.
Yes, the evidential value of these depositions really is nothing to talk about at this point in time, because all that we see in the affidavit is going to be subjected to scrutiny by the court. Now, we have affidavits filed in counter affidavits, right? Filed in opposition to what they, intend to rely upon in their affidavit. And so, let us allow the court to do its work. The court is going to analyze strictly what has been deposed to in the affidavits of all the parties before it, and at the end of the day, arrive at certain critical conclusions. I do not want us to engage in the debate whether or not some of the things deposed to in that paragraph you read are true or not. The NDC, as a political party, has its own side of the story. The Electoral Commission has its own side of the story and is going to rely on evidence to substantiate the position taken by it. In the suit. The matter is pending. Everything is ripe for the hearing to commence. Let us all be circumspect in discussing the case because it is pending. I have heard so many comments by political commentators to the effect that if what they have said in the affidavit were upheld, I mean, John Mahama's percentage points garnered in the last election would reduce to 39%, and that of Nana Akufo-Addo would increase to 59%.
There's a certain statistical, mathematical, it appears a lot of scrutiny has gone into the process, and you have had the benefit of reading the affidavit. Does it suggest to you that this is, someone just, making up things?
You see, Sammy, in one statement, one of the lawyers representing us in court said that the computations, the calculations, and the figures relied upon by the Dr. Bawumia and Nana Akufo-Addo in the suit pending is arithmetically questionable. I will stick to that. I will not say the calculations they have made and seek to rely upon in court is wrong. No, I can't say that for now. If I do that, I would be prejudging the matter.
That is so.
I will leave that for the Supreme Court to examine and come out with its verdict. But all I can tell you is that we also have our defense, and in our defense, we're saying that what they have done, the calculation is arithmetically poor.
Okay. What do you also feel about the petitioners and in the affidavit suggesting that by the EC's own rules of where there is overvotes, those votes, the vote for that constituency ought to be cancelled? And the EC went ahead and demonstrated that by cancelling votes in certain areas. And the petitioners are saying there are clear cases of overvotes in other areas. Those votes should equally suffer the same fate. How do you feel when you find this?
Yes, Sami, first of all, the question of whether or not there is overvoting is one which has to do directly with the evidence that you can proffer before the court. But it is obvious that where the various parties in this suit are able to demonstrate through the evidence that they would adduce in the trial that there was overvoting, then, of course, the consequence would be that the votes there are nullified. We wait to see whether the petitioners would be able to establish on the preponderance of probability that there was overvoting. That is a burden they must discharge. And we wait to see how they're going to discharge that. But all I can say for now is that for the NDC and President Mahama, our position is that in the areas they are alleging there was overvoting, nothing of the sort happened. And we are armed with our evidence to face them head on when the time comes and their witnesses go into the box to testify.
I see. Maybe a very final one, and because you're also a lawyer and with sufficient experience at the bar, I wanted to find out, there's this argument and it's gone on for a while. Also, you'd find that it's also in the respondents, I think the first respondents, response as well, answer. They suggest that where, for example, the petitioners say the law requires that you should have gone through biometric verification before you would vote. In addition to that, Dr. Afari-Jan had told the whole nation the famous no verification, no vote. They have sought to say that in instances where this happened, those votes also ought to be annulled. But the respondents suggest that no regulation made by the Electoral Commission or directive given by the Electoral Commission can supersede the constitutional, right of an individual to vote. So even if those infractions occurred, you can't nullify those votes because you can't take away the right of a citizen to vote, which is guaranteed by the Constitution.
Yes, so that is an interesting constitutional argument that should be of course, dealt with some bit of some amount of expertise, and I know the Supreme Court is very adept when it comes to resolving some of these things. But Sami, beyond that, the point I want to make about biometric verification is that it seems to me that we confuse the issues. Look, if you look at CI 74, there are two aspects to biometric verification. First of all, the CI talks about fingerprint verification.
You are referring to CI 75.
Sorry, 75. The first aspect of verification has to do with fingerprint verification.
Okay.
Now, the second aspect has to do with facial recognition. So, when those fingerprint machines faulted on election day and people appeared, they queued, they had their ID cards with them, I mean, they were known, they could easily be recognized by members of the community. That in itself was a form of verification, envisaged under the CI 75.
Okay.
Then you have the fingerprint.
I just opened it, and I think what you're doing is referring to Regulation 30 of the CI 75. And I want to read that portion where it says that identification and verification of voters. Now, it says that, 1, a presiding officer may, before delivering a ballot paper to a person who is to vote at the election, require the person to produce A, a voter identification card, or B, any other evidence determined by the commission in order to establish by 1, fingerprint or facial recognition. That's
right.
what you're referring
That's right.
to.
And
so,
you see,
so you are saying it's either way.
You see, the or there is disjunctive.
But after
either of them can stand.
After 31, you come to 32.
Yes.
Which says that the voter shall go through biometric verification process.
Precisely. And the point I'm making is that, look, if you construe this...
Samson, with all due respect, that is why the Supreme Court is seized with this matter. You are lawyers.
No, we're not discussing the
merit.
We're not
discussing the merit.
What are you discussing?
No, you're not discussing
we're looking at the law.
I think let him finish and let you have your bite.
What constitutes biometric verification or identification will be decided by the Supreme Court.
All right, let him finish his point.
Really?
Yeah.
So the point I'm making is that, you see, when those fingerprint gadgets faulted on election day, many people concluded that, look, that was supposed to be the only form of verification. So you'd find that voting in some cases was even suspended. I think that if we construe the provisions in the CI carefully, you'd realize that that was not even necessary to start with.
I see.
Because why? Because those who appeared at the polling stations with their ID cards and could be recognized naturally went through a verification process, biometric in that sense.
Okay, like Obna said.
Let me just stop you there.
Okay.
He says,
and that's where you really end your point.
He says people decided that. Nobody decided that. It was the Electoral Commission that issued a statement and said that elections should be suspended. They knew the law, but they decided that without biometric verification, because of the word shall, which is very emphatic, that voting should be suspended in many parts of the country and to be continued the next day. If they thought that this, what you are saying should hold, then the Electoral Commission would not have issued a statement publicly instructing the... That's why I'm saying that we have made our case to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will look at your response.
Yes.
Why are we not discussing your response, but you want to discuss Dr.
Baumia's... I'm not discussing...
But you know that in my introduction, I mentioned that we are awaiting those as well.
Then maybe you should have waited for that.
No, we move on. We move on. We move on. Every week there are developments, and we take the developments as and when they happen. So now it's your take. You now come in. The NPP certainly, yes, the NPP, forgive me, I still am not able to just single out Nana Addo, Bawumia. So they appear to have been able to do a good job by beating the time. They were given a very short time to submit the affidavit. They have done it. They went to, the EC went to court seeking to ask for the opportunity, to supply its affidavit sometime later after the NPP has finished, its case. They were denied that opportunity. And I've heard comments suggest that they were seeking to be given an opportunity to be lazy. I don't know what you say about that, because if the NPP was able to complete it within that time, 5 days, they should also do the same.
See, on this same program, something I've said before, and I want to repeat. Elections are run by the Electoral Commission and their agents. It's unfortunate that in recent times, they've been trying in a very subtle manner, when you listen to the reviews they've been doing, to put the blame, we employed a lot of people who are not mainstream officials of the EC, so they may have made some mistakes. In fact, some people took money to train people and they didn't train them, so we'll take them to court. Strange excuses coming up from the EC. First and foremost, and I've said this, the argument about whether parties are present or not is neither here nor there. The election is run by the EC. Even if the party hasn't got an agent, they are duty bound, constitutionally bound, to report what the people's mandate is. Period. Parties, through what has been happening in the past, decided, look, we want to be part of the process. But that is not mandatory. What is important is we have a state institution funded by the state to do what is right for the people of this country. And that should end the matter there. So I look at what has transpired. Whatever MPP or NDC is bringing to support their affidavits are plain sheets of paper which you gave to them. They are not even originals. These are duplicates. So the question is, the Electoral Commission, where are their 26,000 originals? Because, in fact, the difference between the original and the duplicate is in the original, you write with a pen. The duplicate comes out in red, and that's why we are calling them pink sheets and all sorts of things. They should essentially be the same. You understand? They should essentially be the same. But that is why we have presented our case. The most interesting thing I heard was from the General Secretary of your party, and in his usual political, streetwise attitude. So, the MPP sent many cases, 39 cases. It's been reduced to just 2. The court has dismissed everything. Very interesting, but disingenuous, But I was happy that the Supreme Court consolidated everything into 2 issues. 1, were there violations, irregularities, malpractices? Against that yellow book that you put there, because we have regulations. So if you don't go according to the grain of the regulations, either they are omissions or commissions or irregularities, it all falls under 1. And if indeed there were, was it of material impact on the result? That's what we are talking about. That is all. These are the 2 issues.
Have you heard the argument, for example, that in your petition and affidavit, you refer to widespread irregularities, breaches, omissions or commissions or whatever they are? The question is, in all of that, did it inure to the benefit of one candidate, of all the candidates?
That is not what we have said. We want to go according to the law, and we'll leave it to the judges to decide. That, look, your law says that before you vote, you shall undergo biometric verification. And in fact, in my polling station, 5 people were not allowed to vote at the time I was leaving. Whether they voted after I left, I don't know, because the machine could not verify them. So they had gone through what you had said, but they were not allowed to vote. In fact, 3 had left, 2 were still trying to try. The law says that you should not be allowed to vote. Whether you voted for candidate A or B, we cannot even tell. So we are saying that vote should not count. No, it's a decision for the Supreme Court to take, whether they agree to that position or not. That one will leave it to the Lords of the Justices, the Justice of the Supreme Court.
The suggestion you hear is that, look, it is because this election we are interrogating it. Otherwise, if you go to all past elections, you'll find similar problems anyway.
But those are past elections. We are talking about 2012. And I think we should look at 2012 because it's a watershed in our country. And it's important as we mature as a democratic country, we do these things for the future and for now as well. And the other category is overvoting. Well, people can disagree on what constitutes overvoting, but that is our layman's view. The Supreme Court lords will decide what overvoting is. And the law is very clear on what overvoting should be. So once they decide, and I'm saying that, in fact, if you look at the calculation, I've looked at it. Not all the votes that we are asking to be nullified belong to
the same category.
Apart from that, they do not belong to one person. They belong to all. So we are asking that if, in fact, this is what happened and it's irregular, you just cast it aside. That is what the MPP's case is about. It's not about taking out only John Mahama's votes. That's not what the petition
You're
says.
still on Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM on radio and your Joy News channel on television. Your views are welcome. 1422. This is your most authoritative news analysis show, and on this show we put Ghana first. I'll hear from you, Chum.
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, when the MPP filed additional polling stations irregularities up to about 12,000, then I realized that they were beating a retreat. They wanted a way to get out of the court because the court has ruled that it will not nullify total elections. It will look at pockets of irregularities. Okay. But if you go
when
to
you say
court,
the court has ruled, what do you mean?
Oh, you look at the case of...
You're talking about precedent.
Yes, precedent, of course. You look at the case of Rojo Metenunu. You see, we have an election. And you and I know that no elections can be without some challenges. That is why I am happy at the way the Supreme Court has put the issues. Whether or not there were irregularities, there were omissions, commissions, whatever. But the second leg of the issue is the most important. Were they material to the outcome? That is, if...
Okay, I think this is the second time I'm hearing somebody smuggle a certain word into the issues that were framed. Last week, I heard somebody say substantial, whether it substantially affected the outcome. And now you're talking whether it materially affected. I'm sure that you don't find semantics. You don't find it. And you would agree as a lawyer that you would not have agreed to such a framing of the issues from the start. So let's keep to what it is.
No,
it is whether or not the alleged commissions breach statutory, all of them, whether or not they indeed affected the outcome.
Thank you. I was not speaking as a lawyer here because not all our listeners are lawyers. You see, I have to bring the matter down. Whatever it is, however it is that the Supreme Court has framed the question, the Supreme Court is going to look at materiality to see whether or not it affected the outcome. If it's not about materiality, what can it be? You see, now, you are going into an election. There are rules and procedures. Bring your agents, bring their signatures, do this, do that, verify voters register, do this. The scrutiny that they are purporting to do now were supposed to be done before the elections. It is over. You understand it? If indeed we were allowed to do...
I just want to point to you. They plead that, you said we were supposed to do it before the elections, and I just want to be fair to them. They plead that the electoral roll, the time it was promised to have been given to them was not given to them at that time. It was submitted very late.
You and I were in this country.
Yes.
Did the MPP file any suit in court to say that there has been a delay in releasing of voters' registers to us?
They complained about it.
Did they file any suit? Now they filed a suit. So let us look at a similar situation. You get it? You don't just talk. Before you go to court, go to the Supreme Court or go to our courts and see the number of cases that are pending. How many of these cases do you hear people come to radio to say that I am going to court before they even file? All they do is talk. You are saying the MPP has done well in filing the affidavit. In fact, what would they have done? they have contemplated a case even before the elections that when we lose the elections, we will do plan A, plan B, plan C. It is there clearly. So all that they are doing, the political gimmickry, that Ochidakun and the others.
The suit is a political gimmickry.
I am telling you that message that last time Gabi sent to us on a studio here. What did he say? It's not about merit. It is all about politics. That was what he sent. So he's not talking about they're going to get any good thing from the Supreme Court, but they just want to whip up the sentiment of their base. You get it?
You think that's a fair comment to them?
It is. He sent a text message, not I sent it.
Okay.
When we are looking at whether or not they have a case, he is sending us a text message that they are not talking about merit. They are talking about politics, that we are not in normal times. You get it? When we are busily looking at the fact that, well, can this case add to our precedence? Can this case add to our jurisprudence? For me, by the way they are going about the case, it will end up being an unimportant case and a waste of the process of the court. The case has started like mathematics. But like my senior colleague said, there are serious implications of constitutional law in this matter. And when it gets there, you see the top lawyers or the big lawyers in constitution come out. You get it. When you start with the mathematics, yes, you can begin to take out 1, 2,
Maybe
3.
you should be speaking to the substance.
Exactly. Now he was talking about the fact that the EC is a public institution, and even without agents, they should make sure that they do the right thing. Can you what would have happened in this country if no party agents were allowed to join the EC in conducting the elections? Even when their agents are there, they are complaining that the EC.
Sorry, but I'm not sure you understood him.
That
He's
is
not
what
talking
he
about
said.
party
He
agents.
is saying that the EC, even without agents,
the EC employed agents, and you hear the EC speak in a tenor that suggests that we cannot guarantee the independence or neutrality of all of our, or the professional conduct of all of our people.
I think that is not what he was trying to say. He
all
was
right.
saying
Why?
that.
Are you not speaking for me?
No.
Are you second guessing me, please? Please.
In any case,
speak your mind and let me speak my mind.
We're talking about their evidence of overvoting and the rest. What happened? What protests did their agents raise at those police stations that they are alleging to have been fraught with irregularities? What did their agents write? On the election result sheet, there are, provisions for protest. Ask them how many agents of DS signed or made protest. They all signed the results.
It's not so.
Most of them signed. They come out and say that what I signed was not my word.
They have a large number of unsigned.
Last time we were here, Dr. Okwebe was telling you the statistics of the numbers that were unsigned and why he believes that they don't have a case because they were sleeping. You get it. Your agents signed a very large chunk of your sheets, and then you come back and say that the mistake of my agent should not disenfranchise or should not go to hurt the populace. What are we saying here? These are agents who have become part of the law, the electoral law. In fact, they are not just agents that you can pick in the morning and then go and say, oh, go and represent me. No. They have become part of the electoral law. So they have, in a way, become part of the EC in conducting
What is your
elections.
expectation of the respondents between now and when we are in court on the 16th?
My expectations, you see, there's been some bias. Every time the NPP files anything, that is what is being discussed in the media. When the opponents, the respondents...
The NPP did not file a joinder. We had a discussion of joinder for about 2-3 weeks.
No. When the opponent files anything, or the respondents file, that one, let's go to court. But immediately Bawumia puts out there 59%. We were in this country when Bawumia came out, read a tall, written note for him with all mistakes that the inflation figures that the government has put out there is not correct. His figure is right. In fact, Bawumia has proved that he's really lacking some mathematical. He has a problem with mathematics.
Okay.
This is the same thing that he's doing here.
All right.
Saying that Nana will have 59 when all the people around him are saying that there could be a runoff. They cannot even pinpoint and say that when the Supreme Court rules, Nana will become president. They say, let's go for runoff. Okay. Now, Baumia comes and say that, look at how realistic you are talking about. 59% and 39% for.
Have you seen the affidavit? Have you seen how they arrived at
I am saying that in the same way that he came out to put out his over the head figures for inflation, in the same way he is doing to whip up sentiment. It is politics.
I see.
It is politics.
I think I deserve to respond to this. You see, the NDC employs young people who have no experience in politics. So they come and sit on radio. They are consumed. I think too excited to find themselves to be a part of a communication team.
No, but I think
you
can raise your protest without attacking him.
He has attacked Dr. Baumia.
I am saying that
he has attacked. You sit here and you say that Baumia that has a problem with mathematics.
The figures he's giving is unrealistic.
What do you know in your life to accuse Dr. Baumia with his background?
But I
in the Bank of Ghana to come and say such a thing. And that's why I'm responding to him in like. It's absolutely vital that we show civility and respect. We show civility and respect. The case is in court. We have made our case. Are you a member of the panel to determine the arithmetic accuracy or efficiency of what? Let the judges decide.
All right.
You've been asked the question. Put out there are being discussed. I'm saying they are unrealistic.
Thank you.
What do you mean by they are unrealistic?
Thank you.
What do you mean?
I was asking him, for example, if he had gone through the affidavit and knows how they arrived at the figures. I am sure I'll invite him to read them also.
I'm sure he has.
Maybe he has, but that is his opinion. He's entitled to it.
By the 8th of by the afternoon of
so let me bring in Abdul Malik Koku Baku Jr. Koku, let's have your take on this historic election petition.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that it really is nothing. It will have no effect and things. I'm really surprised. This is a major development in our election history, including our judicial history. After all, the Constitution envisaged that was possible, that there will be an election dispute. And so we made provision for that litigation and the appropriate forum for people to deal with. The CI 74 also 75. 75. No, 74.
75 and
yes,
47.
Oh, no. I'm talking of CI 74.
Okay, good. All right. Go on.
No. Wait a minute.
You're correct. The rules, the Supreme Court rules.
Yes, 74. That's right. Also buttresses that point that I'm making.
Okay.
And so when it happens, and we have people who decide to choose that option and exercise it, I think that it is only a reinforcement of the constitutional discipline that we are all seeking to bring to bear on the governance situation. It ought not to be underestimated. Look, we are all talking about the need even to fast track it because we think that the president himself, as he sits there, would need to go over this. The petitioners will need to overcome it. The nation itself wants to run quickly away from this. So it is not something you can underestimate. And the weight, the scope and weight of the material that the petitioners have put together and that is before the court is amazing. I know why NDC chaps would want to dismiss it. It's because in 2005, they attempted, and actually he mentioned Rojo Metronuno.
Yeah.
They did a very poor attempt at seeking to invalidate the 2004 elections by asking a high court to actually invalidate the president-elect instrument 2004, that's CI 49. They went to court a year and a half after their results had been declared. And I have the list, the reliefs they were seeking. They wanted the court to compel the EC to publish the results at the constituency, polling station, regional, and national levels. I thought they also had agents in all those places. And they also had those pink sheets or whatever they were. So you would have expected that that information was also with them. But they were seeking the High Court to do so. And then also to invalidate CI 49. Nobody believed. And indeed, I am amazed. I have to be very honest with you. that within the 21-day time frame, people could put together this complex document. It's useful exercise. It's the court that will determine the outcome. I'm not going to go in that direction. But for whatever the outcome, this country's election system will never be the same again. It's like the stolen verdict and the boycott of parliamentary elections by the opposition parties. It led to subsequent electoral reforms which enhance the integrity of our election system. So whatever the outcome of this matter, this country and these elections will never be the same again. From that perspective, I'm amazed that anybody will have such a dismissive attitude towards such an important matter. Having said that, now I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a street, pocket lawyer. But you see, the CI, the 75, the 31 and the 2, which my brother read out, it worries me. Before I go there, let me read what Afarijan was supposed to have said on December 5th, 2012. And I'm told this is part of the evidence that has been put together in the video form.
Part of it.
He said, let me also share with you some of the firm decisions that we have taken together with the political parties. No verification, no voting. And by verification, we mean everybody will have to be verified biometrically. We have agreed in principle that where the votes found in the ballot box outnumber the persons verified to vote, the results of that polling station will be cancelled. Now, identification and verification, the one he read, my understanding is this. 31, a presiding officer may, and note the word may, before delivering a ballot paper, note ballot paper, to a person who is to vote at the election, require the person to produce A, a voter identification card, or B, any other evidence determined by the commission. My understanding, my street understanding, is that this is what must happen, and even there says me, before a ballot paper is delivered to a voter. That's the first step. Now, second step, 2, the voter shall go through a biometric verification process. At this stage, you are casting the ballot. That's the second stage. You are casting. You casting the ballot, you can only cast the ballot if you have been biometrically verified. Otherwise, these two things should have been collapsed into one. Do you understand? And leave the first one standing. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe the Supreme Court justices, who are better lawyers, will see that what I'm saying makes sense.
Okay.
Now final one, please, final one. It's we clear some distortions first.
Okay.
My brother, Mr. Chum Berima, is that the name? Yes. Thank you. I think has been unfair to Gabi. I wasn't on the program then. I was hiding my somewhere in New York, but I was monitoring. If you recall, I think what I heard Gabi's text say was the question of the boycott of parliamentary vetting thing. Yeah. And people were linking, and he said that was not the logical. It was not a question of logic, but it was a question of politics.
Yes.
He was not talking of the case, a substantive case, the petition dispute, election dispute, being in court as not having merit or being sheer politics. That's not what Gabi said.
Yes. He sent the text to me, really, and I read it here on this platform. Yeah. And subsequently, it has been, rephrased.
Yes, it's so unfair.
And said in many ways on this platform, and I have sought to explain my understanding. I decided not to explain again because it might sound as if you are defending somebody in a certain way. Yes. That is my understanding. That is his understanding.
Yeah, so, but he was wrong.
Yeah.
But the court he was wrong.
Into their boycott.
He sent the text. He was wrong. He sent the text in respect of the boycott and said the boycott.
Let's not do
the boycott and the intention to sustain the whatever going to the premises, or what happened in Chachu's case also, where you had people massing up and forming several groups and all of that. He said that is politics, and that's what they ought to do.
It is all about this.
No, I think we should be. We are capable of drawing the distinctions, fine lines of distinction. I know it's a quality of this program to have the capacity to do that fine line, draw that fine line of the extensions. And that's what we are doing here.
That is so.
You are not being fair to Gabi.
Okay.
And I think you, the host, must give us guidance.
And I'm saying I have had to come back on this issue not more than once.
So I think you're suffering from fatigue or some sort.
No, apart from
Can
that,
I finish?
Okay. Yes. Apart from that, it is always a deliberate ploy of the NDC that when things have been explained, they will go back and restate the old
It's not
lie.
fair.
They do it all the time. And they've done it to me on many issues, and you explain it, and then it will create the impression that you are supporting my point of view, and you feel uncomfortable. But again, I talked about body language and posture. It is this kind of posture of some of the elements of the party
I think
that makes it difficult for them to solve even strikes.
Sorry, issues the point about
irregularities
and the effect they may or may not have. I'm sure I read this here before. If you recall,
sorry, but before you go there, I was asking when you refer to the no verification, no votes being a directive by the EC, and the law allows them that the EC can give guidance on how the process should go on, and then you refer to the CI 75, the regulation as well. The argument that is being put against that, and I've heard references to precedent. And there's this particular case of Philip Kwekwa Palo versus Electoral Commission of Ghana. And all the justices of the Supreme Court were they were in one mind. And what they expressed could be put in one of the statements, for example, which is that this Justice Atugwa, he said, I must emphasize that the right to vote or the registration of a voter is not the same as the means of identifying the voter. It is my view that the provision or substitution of an effective mode of voter identification seeks to give effect to the constitutional right to vote and be registered for that purpose, and cannot be inconsistent with them. In effect, all of them seem to agree that any procedure or directive or other regulation that seeks to take away the person's right to vote will not be sustained.
Well, I'm sure it was that. I remember the controversy was about thumb prints and photo ID, and there was a decision. People were wondering whether the photo ID should not be generalized. Am I right? Because I recall
when the Attorney General then fought against it.
I'm not a lawyer. The Supreme Court, as you know, has within its remit to review
its own decisions.
So that is there. But you see, let me ask an uneducated question. If you are not registered, can you vote?
You can't.
As a Ghanaian citizen,
you can't.
You have not been registered. You walk to a police station. You say, look here, I'm a Ghanaian. I'm 18. And it is my constitutional right to exercise my franchise. So I have come to vote. I'm just asking a question.
Yes.
Would you be allowed?
You wouldn't be allowed.
Now, so the fundamental right to vote is captured in a certain form of legislation and procedures, isn't it?
Yes, but if
so
that
that you
legislation,
can exercise it.
If that's legislation, according to the court, and let me just go to one line from Justice Kwega. He says, the Electoral Commission has no power to make any regulations which unnecessarily abridges the right to vote. Whatever it does in this direction should rather facilitate the exercise of the right to vote.
Yes, and biometric verification was to facilitate and then authenticate, make sure that the right people were voting. That's all.
Okay.
So I don't see this as a hindrance.
It doesn't abridge
in any case,
the rights.
that ruling, there were also some parts that the EC's conduct was dealt with.
But something,
what
you have read really confirms our position. The fact that you are 18, the Constitution says you are 18. The Constitution then gives the power to the Electoral Commission to register you, have some procedures that will allow you to vote.
That is so.
Why are we saying that we are creating the impression that biometric verification rather hinders you or stops you from voting or takes away your rights? It does not take away your rights.
I see.
It doesn't.
But then the courts will decide those things.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Interesting. You are still watching and listening to Newsfile on your Joy News channel on Multi TV and on Joy 99.7 FM. I wish we could do a last bit, 2 minutes each on this issue, and then we'll move to the SADA probe. The SADA probe, also the SADA is supposed to be probed by Parliament and also by the Electoral Commission.
No.
Now, sorry, by Parliament and Shraj. Sorry, by Shraj. And by Shraj. Okay. All right. So I was going to ask now that on the 16th, we certainly are going to call. The process is going to start by the rules that Kwaku Baako referred to, CI 74. The court is supposed to sit even on holidays, every day, weekends and holidays. That gives you relief that everything will move on fast as is necessary so that we get to the end of this case, doesn't it?
Well, Sami, that is the position of the law for now. But it is significant to state that Bernard Mona is in court. I mean, he's raised very serious issues about
the CI 74,
the constitutionality of CI 74, which seek to, as it were, take away the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court when it comes to, its power to review its own decisions, which has been enshrined in the Constitution. That matter is pending before the court, and I know pretty shortly the court is going to deliver its verdict on that matter.
Is that not best practice? In Kenya, the ruling was final. There's no opportunity of review.
So, we are talking about the Constitution, which actually creates the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, and it says that that court, in all matters, has the power to review its decisions. Then you have the situation where subordinate legislation, a CI, seems to derogate from that jurisdiction vested in the Supreme Court. So we wait to see how the Supreme Court's thinking on that matter would be.
Kwaku is itching to make a point.
No.
I want you to make that point. Let me make the point before you continue.
It's education I want.
Good.
The power of Supreme Court to review its decisions. That's 1331, isn't it?
That is so.
The Supreme Court may, note that, review any decision made or given by it on such grounds and subject to such conditions as may be prescribed by rules of court.
Rules of court.
That is, subject to such conditions as may be prescribed by the rules of court. The two of you are lawyers, not three. We have three lawyers here. This CI 74 and the rest, are they not part of the rules of court?
It is part of the rules of court, and the committee actually is constituted, includes justices of the Supreme Court.
Yes, so I don't see an unconstitutionality. Maybe I'm just a layman. That's I said I wanted education.
Kwaku. Sorry, you
and
read.
It's May on top too. They are not. They shall not. It's 133.
Yes.
I just want to. Yes.
You see,
that's the key point.
You see.
Just educate me.
We here we are saddled with the art of interpreting the Constitution, and you read the 1331 to mean that the rules of a court committee could make rules to obviate.
So you are suggesting that the rules they have made is inconsistent with the Constitution.
Yes,
because to the extent of that inconsistency,
let me make a very critical point.
That's what you are saying.
Let me make a very critical point.
Can you read that portion
again?
Look,
it says 1331. The Supreme Court may review any decision made or given by it on such grounds and subject to such conditions as may be prescribed by the rules of court. Now, what that means is that, look, the right to go to the Supreme Court and ask it to invoke its review jurisdiction and review a certain verdict handed down by it is safe under that provision. But the mere fact of applying to the Supreme Court to review a decision will not automatically mean that the Supreme Court will grant the application for review.
Okay.
Now, what the rules
selective, they have pointed out certain areas.
What the rules of a court committee has done is to say that, look, don't even come. You cannot come. That is where Bernard Mona has a problem.
And Kwaku is saying that they derive that mandate from the same constitution you are referring to.
Yes, it is derived from the same mandate, but it does not include taking away the jurisdiction to review.
Okay, let's do that.
I think that 1
We'll get there.
That is Bernard Monet's argument.
We'll get there.
It's an interesting one.
The judges will take a decision.
Yes.
On just plain English language. It says subject to.
Okay.
And if it says subject to their own rules.
Okay. Gentlemen, I was asking your expectations briefly as the court reconvenes on 16th to start the hearing in earnest.
Yeah.
In 1 minute, if you can.
I haven't had my
unfortunately, you appear to have gone a different tangent.
You have gone a different interpretation.
Yes, we need to take a quick break, and I want us to wrap up on this matter before we go there.
The Supreme Court's ruling on the EC's thing was in the right spirit. It showed that they are together with us, all wanting to speed up this process. That whole motion, of course, was dead on arrival. I just don't know why anybody attempted it, So that was the spirit. People should not jubilate. I mean, the petitioners should not celebrate. There's no need for euphoria relative to that, though it was good for the process.
All right.
Yeah.
They wanted more time, they didn't get. Now, Kwabena, what are expectations as we get into
I have been attending court religiously, and I can see from the posture of the Supreme Court that they want to move this on very quickly. And people did not understand why they gave the two teams the opportunity to try and sort out the issues. Well, that is giving you a long rope. At the end of the day, they quickly came and said, reduce the issues to two. I believe that the rules of court that the justices have put in place to act expeditiously, the nation needs that.
Okay.
The petitioners, the MPP, we need that. The government needs that. The country needs that.
Okay.
So we need to move, quickly and expeditiously.
Yeah. For me, all that is going on is good. Only to say that one-sided issue, for instance, affidavits filed by one side, is not all. The matter will be, dealt with.
That's so.
Into the merits of the issue. But for me, I don't see. You see, sometimes when you start a case, it goes swiftly. But when the action itself begins, the nitty-gritties begin, then you realize that, so it should have gone this way and that way. So the swiftness of the Supreme Court today is good. But when it gets to a certain point, and they also, in their own wisdom, slow down, or decide that some time should be, taken off, or that everybody should agree.
Okay.
Let's agree.
Thank you very much. This is Newsfile. We'll be right back. All right, you're welcome back. This is Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM on radio and on your Joy News channel on Multi TV. And I've got quite a number of your text messages. I'll try and see how many I can roll out in this very last lap. But we have just about less than 20 minutes to look at this other issues. I'd like us first to look at the president's induction into office of Alban Gbagbo, E.T. Mensah, P.V. Obeng, Ayebia, and the five men.
Well, really, I don't like getting into endless debates, especially when it's the prerogative of a president to design the kind of structure he wants to use in delivering on his promises and programs. Even though there are legitimate points like, well, what is going to be the cost to the national purse? And people are talking of size of government. I think these are legitimate things. So within that context, if there's a dispassionate inquiry about it, and then we find ways and means of going fair deal.
Earlier, there were questions where they were going to be paid from, and now we are clear that they are going to be paid from the presidency. That's okay?
Yeah, but obviously, where were they going to be paid from?
Still money.
Yes, it's the national purse, the consolidated fund. And we may even have to check their rankings. Some of them may be of ministerial rankings. The presidential staffers, some have presidential, ministerial and deputy ministerial rankings. So the bottom line is that I'm unable to engage in a protracted debate whether the president had a right to launch a task force to undertake a particular exercise. I find it difficult to engage in that kind of debate. Really, performance, I would seek to audit, monitor their performance and their delivery, and then find out whether indeed he succeeded or not. When Kwame Nkrumah was confronted with some challenges with the normal bureaucracy and things, he actually created a certain alternative bureaucracy, if you like, at the Flagstaff House. And they were in charge of quite a lot of the things that happen in terms of delivery on economic and social interventions. It's something that you don't engage in an endless debate on it, because really you cannot even take the president to court or any other forum challenging him as to whether he had a right to do that or not. So I am not. I would wait, audit their performance, monitor, evaluate, and see if it was of benefit to the nation or it ended up being a drain on the national purse. That's my attitude towards that.
Now we know that SADA is going to be investigated by Parliament and also by SHRAJ. SHRAJ says it's commenced the preliminary investigations, activating its powers under Article 218E, Clause E, which mandates it to investigate all instances of alleged or suspected corruption or misappropriation of public funds.
I have no problems with that. I believe last time we discussed this thing here, I said that the appropriate or relevant parliamentary committee could exercise that parliamentary oversight responsibility by asking for answers to some of the questions that we're asking. That for me was distinct from the job of auditing that the Auditor General is obliged to do under the law, because SADA is subject to auditing by the Auditor General. Here, the last time the matter was more of the joint venture thing that project. They had entered in with Asontaba. And there are a lot of people who have made their views. I was clear in my mind after assessing some documentation on that guinea fowl project. I haven't studied too much the tree planting. That one I need to. And when I haven't studied something, I don't make judgmental statements. But as for the guinea fowl, the documentation that I have seen and the briefing that I've had, I see absolutely nothing wrong with it. I have heard people talking about crony capitalism because they think that one particular person is benefiting or his companies are benefiting. I'm still not convinced about that, because this particular company that you call Asontaba, I'm not able to pronounce it, may I be forgiven, or if you like, that GAMS group. My research shows that under the NPP administration, it was a beneficiary of a lot of financial dispensations. Okay. So many, and I have a list here. Okay. Was it crony capitalism? I have developed a certain instinctive reaction to attempts to bastardize local private people. I've developed that instinct because, you see, somehow I was part of a certain political stable that, with our actions over the years, we destroyed some businessmen, the Siaos, the Boachim Mattresses, the Kowus. And so as I've grown, I've decided to be on the alert so that we don't do things that we've done to those people. Look at the George Wusus and Dusay, Ibrahim Mahama, Diana and things. I will err on the side of caution and say that, yes, if they've done something wrong, let's go through the appropriate procedures. So I am not against a probe by SHRAJ or by Parliament.
Thank you very much.
But I am against open attempts to bastardize and criminalize these people.
I take James Agalga's views on that, but from Schiffman, he's in Atosu, he says, whether the affidavit filed by the NPP have nothing new in it or not, whatever, we should allow the Supreme Court to determine it. There are interesting times ahead, and I believe that justice shall prevail. The NPP's battle is still the Lord's. Schiffman, you again. Sorry, I can't read two for you. Stephen Echampon, right, Afarijan and his NDC have a lot of questions. I'm sure you ought to make sure that when you're sending a text, Afarijan does not belong to the NDC. We don't know that for a fact. Yes, the will of the people was stolen in the December election. Supreme Court will speak and speak well at the right time. Now, Samuel again, sorry. Theophilus Andor, right, Samson, we all heard the famous no verification, no vote, and so on. So the EC must go and prove all of that. Now, James.
Well, for me, the inauguration of the
five wise men. It was 3 wise men.
Well, whatever the description is, for me...
You find their job strategic?
It's very strategic. It tells you the extent to which the president is committed on delivering on his campaign promises. Now, in the manifesto, which has become, of course, the document which should guide all of us so far as our policy is, the president outlined his vision. He's clearly identified certain priority areas that he wants to tackle. Now, we're going to do this piecemeal. The president thinks that the involvement of the 5-member task force would help him discharge the mandate that the people have given him. And so for me, I don't have a problem at all. People are talking about payments and all that, how they're going to be paid, and that it's an unnecessary increase in the numbers in government. I beg to differ with them. Look, the president thinks that after a certain period of governance, this country should have reached a certain threshold in terms of development. Now, if these individuals are the people who have the expertise and the ability to push that agenda, why are we talking about what is going to be spent paying them? That is where I have the problem. SADA. Well, I think it's welcome news.
30 seconds.
Welcome news, because we've heard a lot of accusations and counter-accusations. People are saying monies have been spent on guinea fowl projects, and yet they haven't seen anything. SADA has spoken, we've heard them. They're saying that, listen, these projects can come to fruition within 1 day. So let us see whether certain measures have been put in place to ensure that the guinea fowl project materializes.
The 2 of them.
Yes, so if Shraj is saying it would investigate the matter, it's welcome news. This government believes in, rooting out, getting corruption, bringing corruption to the barest minimum. And so for me, if there were some corrupt deals...
Okay, I know James, if I don't stop him, he will talk on end. In class, he used to beat me to it in history, and he would write so plenty.
Oh, he was your classmate?
Yes, he was my classmate at Navasco.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I want to say, presidents are human beings like us. They are not angels. And let's talk about president this, president that, and they are fallible. You understand? And I believe that as a country, we should start thinking. 25 million people, in my personal view, and I'm sure there are even people in my party who disagree. And when we were in government, I had a few clashes with some of my own colleagues. I think this country can run with 60 ministers. I'm telling you. What we need is to have a slimline administration and get efficiency. That's what we need.
Will you convince a next NPP administration to put in
if I had won the mandate in 2007 to become the presidential candidate, I would have had...
It's easier now to say this thing, because you didn't win it. So it's very easy.
No, it's not.
I think you should ask President.
Okay, we just...
You can ask.
We have just 2 minutes. Okay, gentlemen, let him land.
I think it's important, and that we have to adopt a bipartisan approach to this kind of thing. Even the changing of names of ministries and all that, I think we're getting to a point where we should have ministries. Every government comes into office, he knows that these are the positions you are going to fill. I've been largely disappointed with the posture of President John Mahama in some of the appointments he's made. You have a chief of staff. What is the work of a chief of staff? He is the one who is at the center of the government, who runs the rod to determine policy, to enforce policy, to make changes. That is his work. You've appointed, in addition, an executive secretary. We've never had that in this country before.
You were press secretary to the president?
Yes. He has appointed executive secretary, which for me would conflict with the role of a chief of staff. Now you have a 5-man team to oversee the ministers.
Sorry, gentlemen, we're unable to proceed any further.
Maybe we should have some time to discuss.
No, time is up. I'm sorry, Chum. Chum, forgive me. Chum understands me. He supported me when I ran for elections at the law school and won. Thank you. This has been Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM and also on your Joy News channel on Multi TV. It's brought to you by the kind sponsorship of MTN, everywhere you go, and Star Assurance, your solid partner. My guest has been Abdul Malik Kwekubako Jr. He is the managing editor of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. James Agalga is a lawyer. He's an MP and Interior Minister Deputy Designate. Now, Kwabna Ejapong is former press secretary to President John Ejakum Kufuor, and Chumberema is also a lawyer and communications member of the NDC communications team. I'm Samson Ladi Ayenene. Good afternoon. The news is up next.